Okay, good afternoon. Nice to see all of you today. My name is Mark Schneider. I am the AVP of K-14 Academic Initiatives and Support for Ivy Tech, helping coordinate dual credit programming across the state of Indiana. We're at another one of our discipline dialogue sessions. We're at like 120 instructors who attended these over the April and May months of this year. So this is a great attendance. Looks like we have another 10 or so joining us today. Happy to see that. Joining us today is our expert in curriculum for, we got like, I think 4 programs we're covering today. I'll let Teresa introduce herself here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Hallman. I'm the Dean for the School of Health Sciences at our Lafayette campus. So I am responsible for all of the health and humanities, or sorry, not humanities, human services courses. My background, just so you guys understand, I am a health person. I've been a health person. My background is in medical assisting. I was a chair, I was teaching, so I kind of have some tools up my sleeves that I will share either way. But I'm just here to basically help you along and answer any questions you have or provide tips, guidance, whatever you'd like.
And we appreciate her being here today. She is a member of our statewide academic advisory committee. So we have 20 program chairs and deans from across Ivy Tech that get together once a month and we discuss various issues as they are popping up as they're related to dual credit programming. But of course, you can always reach out to your local program chair that's helping oversee your program and your dual credit courses. We want those to be professional relationships and an exchange, a dialogue, conversation between the program chair and the dual credit teacher. So that way, the dual credit teacher can get the support that they need from the college, but also I've found out the college learns a lot from our dual credit instructors, especially in areas of pedagogy and things like that, how we can better serve our students. So, always reach out to your local program chair for any issues, but we do have a statewide expert joining us today. So with that being said, Teresa, is there any sort of kind of best practices, just to get the ball rolling here, any best practices that you've seen across the state, whether it's on our on-campus programming or maybe with dual credit programming and dual credit high school classes that has been a big win for students and instructors that they could implement that would help their classes?
My biggest best practice is tying everything to an experience, okay? Making those students think. When I was teaching, one of the things I would do is I'd use my family members and bring in a lot of examples to them. If I was able to tie it to like a video or a field trip or something where they could have that connection, it tended to stick a little bit better. The other thing I can say is, especially when you're getting into like medical terminology and that anatomy, because they are such foundational courses, change repetition, but changing how you do that repetition. So I would do flashcards, I would do memory. I've even done Cahoots. I love that. Yes, you always have a story for everything. Absolutely. They might not remember that the exact thing, but when they remember the story, this sticks with me. I had a anatomy instructor that taught me that every time we exhale, we're giving off self farts because of internal and external respiration. And guess what? That has stuck with me 15 years later. Or lab rat, left atrium bicuspid, right atrium tricuspid. So those little things where they don't realize how much that will actually stick with them. So that's really more of the best practices. I mean, do any of you guys have any best practices or things that you've found that have been a little bit successful?
Don't be afraid to come off mute. We're all friends here.
Yeah, this is really just for you guys. I'm just here to help and support and do what I can to make your classrooms even better, because I know a lot of you guys you're killing it out there.
Similar to what you were talking about with the story is coming up with scenarios and case studies.
Mhm.
And then I've also started letting them create their own scenarios
Mhm.
and building on those. So those have been pretty successful with these kids.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things, healthcare, when this was the thing that I was thinking of doing for the hot topic, but I ended up not doing it, but AI in healthcare. Um, my bread and butter is medical coding. So what I would do is I would tell my students if they want practice, a great tool for them is using AI to create more case studies or more practice work along those lines. Because we would code from history and physical. So I'd have them create a random history and physical and then have them practice. So that's great. I love that. They could even do that more with case studies. So
Okay, well, kind of to move forward here with some of those best practices and things along those lines. Are there any professional development opportunities for our dual credit instructors that they could utilize over the summer or perhaps throughout the year? Often in our CTE programs, we'll have something that's either available on campus to our on-campus faculty and then by extension dual credit instructors. And
Mhm.
we have third-party providers too that offer various professional development. Is there anything like that they should be aware of?
So I'm kind of leading something statewide, so it's going to be best for you to check with your local campus, but there are going to be some new professional development opportunities, specifically looking at continuing education units. So I'm going to plug this, but May 13th here at the Lafayette campus, we are doing one that is for medical assisting. It'll count for 2 general AAA or AAMA approved. So that's the American Association of Medical Assistants approved continuing education units. But recently what we did was I partnered with my vice president and we are sharing this out to everybody. It's basically a playbook on some of that continuing ed. I know if you have a respiratory background, Sellersburg, they typically do a symposium every year. There's so many different things, and depending on what your specialty is, it can help. Now, just in terms of general professional development, we do, one thing that a lot of teachers forget about, or I even forget about, I have to remind my faculty, is because you have that Ivy Tech email, you have access to LinkedIn Learning for free. There are so many things on there that even I've started taking some courses on there. But that is completely free for you guys. Please utilize it. There's tons of professional development in there. Some even have certificates because I know how much you guys do have to keep that up. The biggest thing would be if there's local, every different profession has a local and a statewide chapter. So some of those events are always great. They're a lot more cost effective than trying to go to like national conferences. However, if nobody has Surge Tech, I was gonna say that's gonna be in Indy this year. So but that's really the biggest thing. Locally, I know we are trying to do something for the fall for our team. And if it's available via Zoom, I'll definitely let Mark know. That way everybody has access to it. But connect with your local teams because there are some discussions going about some of those additional localized trainings, just because we know how important that is for you.
All good tips. And a lot of things that are being offered by these campuses are great options. And then I have heard nothing but good things about the LinkedIn Learning modules. There's a lot of great things that are available out there for them.
Yes. And
You
I
did.
was gonna
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was gonna say to access it, if you go into your My Ivy and then go into Workday and then Learning, there's a direct link right in there. So that's where I found it a little bit easier than some of the other ways to get to it. Like you could do it in the Ivy Learn shell, but typically if you go into that Workday, you can click on Learning and there's all the different options. And also under there, our talent development team also has a bunch of professional development that you guys can do for free. Once again, because you have that Ivy Tech address. So
Um, Yeah, all good points right there. You did mention earlier a discussion about AI as a potential hot topic
Mhm.
in in the health science fields. We've asked in all of these sessions, what is a hot topic? And sometimes it's, new course objectives or other things like that, a new course coming on. But one way or another, over the dozen or so sessions we've had, most of them have circled around to AI. So I'm
Mhm.
not saying you have to discuss AI, but what are some hot topics that the dual credit instructors might want to be aware of
So,
that could
you
help?
know, so a couple of my previous hot topics I did was mental health, because that was the first one I did coming right out of COVID. We were seeing that. And then associated with that, we had learning loss. You guys already experienced that when you have the students that are going over summer break, but it's even been heightened even more with everything from COVID. This year, I actually took feedback from several other deans and our community partners, and it's really working on professionalism and those soft skills. We've at Ivy Tech, we even created a course on that. Um, so it is so important for them to have that professionalism. I mean, we all know that. You guys try to instill that as best you can, but I really wanted to hit home on how important it truly is. Like I said, it was down to that and AI. So I felt right now with what I keep hearing from our community partners that professionalism was a hotter topic. I mean, how does everybody handle professionalism in their classroom?
I'm sorry. So do you mean in regard to the dress code or their behavior or the
Honestly, it can
conduct?
encompass all of that.
Mm.
So when I was in the classroom, I actually had a professionalism rubric, and my students got up 10, 20 points. And it went from everything from having their badge to being in uniform, but also being prepared. Like if we were doing, for example, pharmacology that day, them having their calculator, like their known supplies that they need for that class. So that's kind of what I did. I just didn't know if anybody had any best practices or anything that works well for them. That's what this is all about, is being able to share and see and be able to help each other out if we can. So
So I
Stacy, or
did
go
some
ahead.
trial and error as far as like rubrics as well for that.
Mhm.
And we had one that was like 1 page for each student. And I found it very difficult to, daily keep that account, whether they showed up in their scrubs or
Mhm.
participated or any of those kinds of things. Were they on their phone the whole time? And I actually ended up doing more like a single page for the week. And sometimes I get really good at it. Sometimes I don't, but it's kind of like that. And I
Yep.
have a quick little dauber with the um like a highlighter, and then
Mhm.
I chart by exception. um and so if they don't get points, I dab them to remove them.
Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah, when I did it, I had the luxury that I wasn't seeing the students all 5 days. So what I would do then is instead I would have, so if my class is there Monday, I would have it for Monday, and then I'd have every student on there. But same kind of thing. I typically look for those that were missing versus going and trying to put everything that was there. Just like how I used to do when I was documenting in the ER. Is all their systems are negative unless specified otherwise. And then you'd go in and say, so kind of same principle. That's a great idea. What else? Soft skills.
I like that it, because those workability sheets are so much work for all the kids. That's a really good idea to only document on what the ones who lost points. Thank you for that. Um, for I have the second year, the seniors, and when they're at internships, I came up with a weekly survey that I send out to all their
Mhm.
sites that tells me have they been on their phone, did they show up, are they dressed appropriately.
Mhm.
So a few who tried to pull some things immediately realized, oh no, they're still keeping track of me. So that was helpful as well.
Yeah, that's something we do. Even now, all of my chairs do. They have a minimum of a weekly check-in. Typically, depending on the program, they might even have daily sign-offs, just depending, because my students tend to bounce between people. They're not necessarily with the same person every day. But those check-ins have been great. And then we would also, what we did is we implemented like a mid externship check-in. So here's what their grade is. If I had to determine if I was going to hire this person, you know, and one of the things we hit on there is really the professionalism. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading chat.
No, you're fine. I will say, to kind of go off of some of these hot topics and best practices and other things, something you shared a little bit earlier and another agenda item that I'll put in the chat here that you shared with me was some OER materials. So oftentimes, one of the big things, at least this school year, we've been asked a lot about are different OER materials, considering the new state law that kind of caps, or doesn't kind of, it caps textbook fees and things like that. And that's really put a pinch on some programs, especially different things where there can be a high cost associated with
Okay.
textbooks and consumables and other things like that. So I am putting this in the chat here for different OER resources that Teresa came up with for our instructors. Do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to share in
Sure.
particular? If there is anything you would like to share on your screen, I've made you a co-host. Not that you have to share your screen, but if you'd like to, that is available.
So I just added another resources. OER stands for Open Education Resources. So these are typically a lot of different things that you can use for free. For example, on here, I was actually able to go in and find textbooks. I know sometimes the textbooks are hard or they're, you know, not that up to date. I actually found one for medical terminology, really all of the main core like health science classes. So our HLHS 100, the 101, found a lab book for 102. And this site was actually really cool because when I went in, it had a PDF option. So if a student needed to print it, they could. But it also, the online version had in here, you know what, let me share one of them just because it was really cool to see. So this is the medical terminology book that I found, and it's got online ebook and then the PDF. So right here, this is your attribution. This is what that, all open ed will have some level of this. So if you click on it, it'll tell you how you can use this. Okay, that wasn't what I meant to do. But it'll tell you exactly, like, can you reproduce this? So almost everyone that I found on here, you guys are able to use in the classroom, no issues, okay? I wouldn't put something on there that would give you issues. But when you go on here, and let's say you go and click on the online book, okay, it's here, they can download it. When I actually went in and read it, I mean, it's got table of contents. So I absolutely loved this part, the body terminology, but he's still seeing, okay. Had learning objectives, had a nice breakdown, different types of organization. But then when you get further down, it also embedded some of the YouTube videos that I highly recommend, which is great. If you guys don't use Crash Course for anatomy and some of the topics, you should. They are wonderful. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes and crams the subject in there, but he does it in a way that it's not overwhelming, if that makes sense. But like here with the anatomical position, you know, it's got all the different directional terms. But as you go further, it's got practice, how you practice pronunciation. It's got concept checks, and it's even got, you know, so matching. It has interactive exercises. Almost all the other OER books that I found didn't have it, didn't have this level. So it really feels like a true normal textbook. So just one of the things that I mean, it's got all the different exercises. So it's just a great one, especially if funds are tight. This is a great resource for people because you can put the link right in your classroom or right in your class. It's online, ready to use instead of. What company do you recommend for health science that is online and ready to use instead of textbooks that is more interactive for the students? So Cami, what I typically do is I tend to use a combination. I really like the crash course videos. I'm also a huge fan of Teachers Pay Teachers, if you haven't heard of that. They do have some free items on there. They also have some stuff that's very low cost, and I've caught them when they're on sale, but it's not reinventing the wheel. They have a bunch of activities and stuff on there. The other place that you might look, and this is on that list, it's skillscommons.org. That has a lot more of the skill-based or activities on there that you can use for free. So it's really just I tried to put everything on there. For more interactive, that flippity.net that I added on there, all you need is a Google account and you can create, show you. I stopped my screen. But this is what I used a lot during COVID when I had to switch all my classes to virtual. So it's got MedTerm. This randomizer is great. You could input whatever, let's say if you're doing an integumentary system, you could then input, the prefixes, word roots, and suffixes and have it randomly generate and have them make that word. There's games in here. There's matching. There's, if you need typing, spelling, crossword puzzles. So some of these things you can do where it's, they can do continuous practice. I'm also a huge fan of Kahoot and Socrative. And Kahoot, you actually can get an instructor's license for free. You just have to keep hitting no, I don't want to sign up. But there's also a lot of pre-made ones on there. So those are really some of the bigger tools that I used just to supplement. With regards to just something for a text, honestly, some of the publishers that have like the all-in-one bundles, those have been really good because not only do they have a lot of extra resources for you, but they also have student resources. So I've typically used I've used Cengage before and used some of their interactive stuff. I've done McGraw-Hill, I've done Elsevier. But when it comes to doing your own, those OERs are going to be your best bet.
Yeah, those are excellent resources right there. We hope everyone can utilize them. The link is in the chat, and we can also, I'll send out a follow-up email in a couple of weeks to this meeting with the link to the YouTube video for this recording. We can also put these resources in that follow-up too for everyone.
And I was going to say that I've also in the professional development, I've also listed a couple of these websites, so it's right there under additional resources. I've also broken it down by the different courses and added some in. But then at the very top, I have it where it's for each, like the flippity.net, the OER Commons, Skills Commons. So that way you guys don't have to continuously look for it. It's there as long as you have access to it.
Another resource that I'm putting in the chat here for everyone are syllabi course templates for next year. So in the past, the last 3 years or so, we've had just a generic syllabus template for everyone to fill out for their courses for each year. And so that could get a little sticky at times just because some programs have different grading scales than others. And there'd be these small nuances that would cause issues when you'd submit your syllabus and something was missing or off or something like that. So we've gone through course by course for each one of our 400 dual credit courses and created a course syllabus template for that specific course. So that way, at least some of those issues can at least be hopefully hammered out. Now, you'll still have to, as a dual credit instructor, fill in a few things that are particular to your class, your name, your email, your school, things like that. The calendar for how you'll cover the course objectives, that will probably take the longest amount of time out of everything. But these resources are available to you. All the dual credit syllabi can be found in that Google folder right there. So Teresa did a vast majority of the work for all of you that are on here. Is there anything that you'd like to point out about them in particular?
I was going to say they're already updated for next academic year, so they're ready to go. And the nice thing about these is when the person that originally designed them for health, she did it in order of the checklist. So I've kept that same format. So it should literally follow that syllabi template in dualenroll.com. So everything you need in there is there. Red it's colored red. That's typically what you need to update. But yeah, Mark pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's really just your personal information, your activity list. That's typically the biggest of them. But as long as you leave everything that's in there that's not in red, then you shouldn't have an issue on your syllabi check off in dual enroll.
Yeah, and when we do get a question statewide fairly frequently of why do you have to turn in a syllabus, for your dual credit class, and it's something that's required of all college classes that we have to do. So that's first and foremost, since there's college credit with this and it's considered a college class, that is part of it. And the other part, although this really applies more to some of the gen eds that are a lot more highly transferable among institutions, but occasionally we'll get a question from an out-of-state institution, out-of-state college or university, or a private one, and wanting to consider transfer credit for a particular course. Well, if we have a course syllabus, we can send that to that institution and say, here's what was taught, here are the learning objectives, and they can go through and match it up to see if it matches one of their own courses. If that is not the case, and we don't have it on file, then usually the credit can't be transferred in those situations. So that's another reason why we want to do it, just to be able to help those students earn those credits when they have to transfer them right there.
Yep.
Another thing, this will be kind of our last topic here. The course shells that we have, every time we have a dual credit class, there is a course shell that's available for our dual credit instructors. In most cases, they are largely blank. And the reason is that we can't pull what's offered on our on-campus courses into our dual credit courses, because those on-campus courses and all the content in there has copyrighted material, material that's paid for and supported by tuition dollars. Dual credit classes are free, so there's not that tuition dollars to pay for a lot of that content right there. But you can pull in some of those OER type stuff that you have and upload it into that if you want to. Also, sometimes, depending on the course, there might be a common final or something like that. Each program does it a little bit differently, but sometimes those common aspects that have to be done statewide will be loaded up into those course shells too.
And I was going to say for health, there are two. There's one in your medical terminology, HLHS 101. And then if you're doing the capstone course, the HLHS 105, there's also one that they want you guys to use. Now, I will tell you, I've looked at both the finals. Well, technically they were created from one book. As long as you're meeting the objectives in the course, there shouldn't be a reason why your students aren't passing those. Because everything ties back to those objectives. So you really can use almost any textbook for it. The other big thing, I know with some of the OER textbooks, they might not necessarily have like PowerPoints or slides or those types of things, but that's where that skillscommon.org is really important and really useful, because in there, sometimes they do have like full lesson plans for you guys, and it's completely free.
Okay, so do we have, we've kind of covered all of the topics that we had predetermined for this. Do we have any questions from, I think we had 15 people at one time or another on here. We'll open it up. Any and all questions that you might have, now would be a great time to ask them. And while you
Going back to that rubric, hi, sorry.
You're fine.
So I'm gonna drop that in the chat for the attachment as well, like a blank copy of it. Because we have like, when I put it in there, like I give all my students the actual rubric so they know what's expected. And I just staple it to the back of like this packet that I have. So like the actual rubric is 2 pages of like, how many points do they get by meeting criteria? What's that point, right? Like a traditional looking one. And then when you look at it, you'll see, I broke it down by quarter and I put week 1 through 10, because on average, there's about 10 weeks in each quarter, give or take. And then I just average the points each week. I don't enter it in the grade book each week. I tried that. It's still too much. I've got enough to enter. I liked, on one hand, entering it there because students then could see it on Skyward and be like, oh, why did I, do so poorly? And then they could realize, recognize, and improve. But it's a lot of work. So it just depends on you. Otherwise, I just average it for the quarter and put it in as a grade for the quarter. So you'll get a copy of both.
That's awesome. Thank you for being willing to share that.
While anyone thinks about another possible question, for those of you who joined a few minutes after we got started, I'm putting a Google form in here if you want to fill this out when we get done with all these professional growth sessions, or not professional growth sessions, discipline dialogue sessions. We're going to give out professional growth points. Brain had those backwards for a second. Anyways, fill that document out. A couple of weeks, we'll get you some PGP points for your teacher license. Also want to send out a reminder that we are in the middle of our free summer registration for high school students. So any high school students that want to take a class or two with us over the summer for free can sign up with their nearest Ivy Tech campus, the campus in their service area. 100% of the cost of the student is covered. So tuition, textbooks, any fees, consumable fees would be covered by those dollars right there. So any of your high school students that are considering taking classes this summer, or maybe need something to do to keep them out of trouble for a little bit, have them take a class on the college for free over the summer. Do we have any other questions before we get done? I see.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm linking that document that I created on the Open Ed resources, but also my email. If you guys ever have questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I am always available. Let me rephrase that. I might not always be available, but I always respond within 24 hours. But I'm always willing, if you have tech issues, I mean, anything, just let me know, and I'm willing to hop in a Zoom and, do what I can to help, or put you in contact with somebody locally. That way you get the assistance you need.
Okay, did I see
I have a
something?
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We teach the dementia care, 2-credit dementia care. I can't remember the course HLHS number, but
113.
thank you. So we were given the final exam, but the syllabus does not have a required textbook, and so we have the required exam that we have to give to the students, and so we're doing our best to piece together things to make sure that everything is covered. But there's things on the exam that we're not finding all the time, and when we asked our local resource person, they just said, oh, just do what you can, find the information wherever you can.
Which see, I wasn't aware that there was a final exam you had to use for that.
Okay, and that was my other question, because I knew there was for midterm, because I've taught that for a long time, but we were provided with the specific dementia care final, and so I
know that there's one specifically for midterm and then one for law and ethics. Let me follow up on the dementia. Okay.
Okay.
Just because I don't want to give you wrong information. But I will,
We've taught it for years, but this is the first year that we received an actual exam that we were told we had to give that exam. So,
okay. And if you don't mind me asking, where are you located?
we partner with Ivy Tech out of Fort Wayne. We're in Kendallville, north of Fort Wayne. Mhm.
Okay. I know the dean there, so I know the dean and the
Okay.
chair. So,
Yeah.
okay. Let me follow back up on that. And I will get can you send me your email in private chat? And then what I'll do is I'll follow up. I'll try to get you an answer by Monday. But typically what we've done with dementia on our class, we've done a lot of case studies, a lot of the dual credit in our area will team it along with when they're going to do their CNA rotations, because then they'll come back and they'll talk about the experiences. There's some great videos on there. There might be some good stuff in skillscommons.org for that to help supplement. Thank you. But let me find out, because I know, let me see, approved book list was, I think there's a textbook from Cengage that we've used. I haven't found much else. So let me circle back with you. Okay.
Because I've been on the resources trying to just find whatever we can, and we just want to make sure we're doing things correctly, like we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. No, I totally get it. Okay. I'm just making a reminder for myself.
I also added up in the chat, and this was sent to me, there is a conference for CT instructors at J. Everett Light in June. And so I don't know anything more than that. And I just copied the link for registration for that event is in there.
Wonderful.
I think June 17th and 18th.
Well, in case anyone has any other questions or needs a moment to think about any last questions, I always like to close these sessions by thanking everyone for all their hard work and for being a dual credit instructor. In most circumstances, our dual credit instructors are dual credit instructors out of the goodness of their heart. There's a lot of extra work that comes with being a dual credit instructor, whether that's submitting a syllabus, doing a site visit, completing the professional development modules, and other things along those lines. There's a good amount of work that has to be done to be able to offer college credit to your students. And you're doing that out of the goodness of your heart, because you know of all the benefits that's going to come to your students from that. And that says a lot about your character as a person doing that, and as a teacher, to provide those opportunities for your students. So we appreciate all of that, and all the hard work that you're doing to provide those opportunities to your students. So with that being said, I'll open the floor one last time for any questions. And if we don't hear any, we'll call it a day. Okay, well, thank you all for joining. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, our emails are in the chat. And we hope you have a good rest of your Thursday and a good weekend coming up. So thanks.
Yes. And like I said, please don't hesitate if you have questions to reach out to me. I'm happy to help any way I can.